I've gone mint green again today, but I'm here at one of my favourite sites that I like to visit 2 or 3 times a year. Every time I visit though, I always seem to pick the breeziest day possible, and that's no exception today. But I do like it here. This is quite unique habitat, and it's an area of land ready for development. It's been ready for a few years, and it lies between Edwinstowe, which is over there, and Rufford Country Park, which is over there. Centre Parks is over there. So until it's developed, I intend to keep having wanders around here because it's a really unique site, and it turns up some nice invertebrates. Where is it? Oh, this is Vexation Lane, between Edwinstowe over there and Rufford over there and Centre Parks over there. But I'm going over there. Now, like many sites, especially in the Sherwood Forest area, which lie on sandstone, it's really suffered from the dryness and the heat of recent weeks. A lot of this sallow scrub on this part of the site here is really showing the signs, but everywhere is the same. The grass and everything almost looks like November, to be honest, all completely dead with very little in the way of any green on any of the grasses. It's quite some landscape really, this, but it's a lovely site. Now, originally, when it was all scraped out a number of years ago, the idea was that this was going to be turned into some Robin Hood style theme park, and I'll show you a bit more of the sort of geography of the site. Now, there's 2 of the local buzzards playing frolic over the site in the distance. This is the area that was all scraped out and landscaped to form a lake. There is the plan involved having an island, which you may be able to make out. That's that raised area in front, and on there was going to be some kind of castle building. Obviously there was going to be a bridge across and presumably boats on the lake here, but it all fell foul. It was originally a bit of a consortium with 3 or 4 local businessmen that were going to put money into it by all accounts, but then a couple pulled out and it's been left ever since. Now, the reason why the scrub hasn't developed too much is that every couple of years whoever still owns the land comes along and cuts the scrub down by a tractor, but the scrub still keeps coming back, obviously, which is good because it provides my entertainment, and that's looking on the scrub for various caterpillars and other insects. Now, most of the scrub is birch, but there's large areas of goat sallow as well, and just behind me there's an area of pine scrub. There's 2 areas of pine scrub here, and all of the scrub is worth checking because, as I say, this site has turned up some really good invertebrates. Now, on this stem and on the needles, you may well be able to make out 2 ant-like insects, and these are actually bugs. There's one just on that stem now, and this is a species that I found last year, and it's Pilaforus Cinematourus. What I'll do, I'll put a photo in, at least you'll have an idea of what it looks like rather than from this shot. But there is one sort of, these are very active. There's 2 now just on the left of this stem, level with my finger. They're a rare species. There's only a few records in Nottinghamshire, but they are incredibly ant-like. They're usually found almost entirely on pines, often on the ends of the growth, but They do spend a lot of time, presumably, taking in sweet substances. I'm not sure, but they're small. They're only about 4 mil across. Females are slightly larger, but there's plenty of them here. I did find them on Buckby South Forest last year, but they are very, very ant-like. Obviously, years ago, when this site was first sort of scraped and landscaped and bulldozed into the state we see it now, it was all completely bare ground habitat. A lot of what there is here is pretty much almost down onto the bedrock of sandstone. There's very little in the way of any sort of soft, friable material you could call a substrate. But over the years, the grass has developed and the vegetation has gradually built up and encroached, and the scrub started to follow. It is quite flower rich actually. There are a lot of areas of clover here and a variety of flora that you'd associate with a site like this. There's still some areas of sparsely vegetated ground now, and they would provide great interest for anybody wanting to come and survey this site. It's certainly a site that would warrant from a more comprehensive study, and it's a shame that nobody's done it. I've only visited it a couple of times a year on an annual basis, and it would certainly turn up something really exciting and rare for Nottinghamshire. One specific ground beetle that Dillis and I found here a number of years ago, in fact it was August 2012, was the large carabid broscus cephalotes, and I'll stick a photo in here because it is an impressive species. Now, we saw it on 2 occasions here under a piece of discarded rubbish, but not seen it for many years, although undoubtedly it's still here. The downside to this site is there's not much in the way of stuff or material to be turned over. There's a couple of old tyres, but that's about it. But probably nighttime surveys with a torch would reveal quite a variety of ground beetles, but there's a lot to interest the naturalist here anyway. Well, the bit of light rain that we have had in the last couple of days, it's not been much, it's just more or less just wet the ground really, but there's a large nest here of Vexed niger, and Vexed niger is your common garden black ant, and these have been hard at work. They've obviously done quite a lot and are still in the process of enlarging the nest. At the moment, workers are bringing out soil or grains of sand and adding to what is a very large mound actually in terms of area. It's almost a square metre, not terrifically high, about 6, 7, 8 inches high, and the dampness of the soil enables them to construct these marvellous cities. They really are fantastic things, ants. If you've never sat and watched them, you should do. They shouldn't make you itch, but they're fantastic things, all going about the business. Each one of all the many thousands of ants that will be in this colony, all going about the daily business. Very few will be idle, and all doing their specific tasks. The very young ants, those that have recently emerged from the pupa, they usually spend their time in the nurseries tending the eggs and the larvae. And then as they mature and get older, then their roles will change, and some will become guards and some will become foragers. It's a very complex system, but it's a system that works. There's no arguments, there's no tussles. Each ant with its job to do and doing it without question. But each job is contributing towards their own society. It's marvellous how everything is constructed, how ants work together. You may well see all these whitish or straw-coloured objects. They're not plant material, they're the empty pupal cases which used to be sold as ant eggs years ago for those of us who used to have goldfish in the 1960s and 70s, and you bought a carton of ant eggs from the pet shop for your pet goldfish. They weren't ant eggs at all, they were ant pupa. I don't think you can get them now though, I don't think they're sold. And I've seen a few winged males and young queens quite near the entrance. It can only be a matter of time before we have the nuptial flight. It's too breezy today, but as soon as it's still and humid, often thundery, then the day when everybody suddenly notices ants and doesn't like them will be upon us. But I love ants, I always have done. They've always held a fascination for me ever since I was a child, and they still do. Now this amount of activity on the surface of the nest is unusual, and from my experience working with ants and watching ants over the years, this amount of work or activity usually signifies that conditions are nearly right for nuptial flight. I think it's too breezy here today. Today is the 24th of July, but conditions sort of at ground level are very suitable. Looking at this, you would never get this amount of activity on the nest of last year's Niger. You would on Formica rufa, which is a species that are featured earlier on in the spring. That's the famous wood ant. So flying ants coming to a town near you very soon, at least based on this evidence. It's quite incredible the results of the dry spell that we've had, and this brief bit of rain that we've experienced the last couple of days is nothing. It's done nothing at all really to alleviate the problem of dryness. And the trouble is the damage of the heat and the strength of the sun has been done, and I've never seen rosebay willowherb in this state. Never. Can't even remember seeing it in '76. It's unbelievable. I just can't get over it. Never seen it before. The bit down there that's relatively unscathed. I mean, this lot here is in the lee of a hedge, so it's quite shaded as well. It would avoid, to a degree, an amount of the sun. But I've never seen rosebay willowherb drying like this. Now, similarly, about 50% of all the sallow scrub on here is defoliating, or the foliage that's on it is completely brown and dead. Now, sallows are tough things like silver birches, and they'll come, but unless larvae, or the majority of larvae from earlier in the year, have managed to complete their larval cycle and get down off the plant and pupate, then I imagine that there's very little hope for many species. And if this kind of weather continues, because it's forecast, or the hinting that the dryness and the heat could return again during August, I don't know what a lot of the invertebrates are going to do. These are desperate times, and I don't think this is going to be the new normal. I think we've always had hot temperatures. Yes, this year's been excessive, but this isn't going to be something that you're going to get every year. But trouble is, when it comes, it has a detrimental effect, similarly, or opposingly rather, to flooding. When you get those wet summers, they're bad. Most invertebrates want a bit of both, a bit of sun and a bit of moisture as well. Next year, you might see low numbers of many species, and it's all due to the dryness in this hot weather.